Throughout human history, there have been individuals who illuminated the world, guiding humanity through the darkness of suffering and ignorance. The Buddha, the enlightened one from the East. Jesus, the Savior from the West. Two lives, two cultures, two different faiths. Yet their journeys, their struggles, and the truths they discovered share remarkable similarities. Both were born under extraordinary circumstances. Both left behind everything in search of the ultimate truth. Both faced trials and temptations. And both devoted their lives to teaching love, compassion, and liberation. Today, we will revisit the life stories of Buddha and Jesus, not as separate religions, but as two paths leading toward the same eternal wisdom. Join me on this journey of discovery. The story of these two great figures begins with extraordinary signs. In the ancient kingdom of Kapilavastu, Queen Maya had a wondrous dream. A divine white elephant descended from the heavens and entered her womb. The wise sages interpreted this as a sign her child would either become a great king or a fully enlightened being. And so, Siddhartha Gautama was born, destined to shape the spiritual path of millions. Far away, in a humble village of Nazareth, another miraculous event took place. The angel Gabriel appeared to Mary, telling her she would give birth to a child unlike any other, the Son of God. On the night of Jesus' birth, a brilliant star illuminated the sky, guiding wise men from the east to pay their respects to the newborn Savior. Two children, born into vastly different circumstances. One in the palace of a royal family, surrounded by wealth and luxury. The other in a simple manger, wrapped in cloth, lying among animals. Yet, both births were marked by divine prophecy, signaling that these children would one day change the course of history. Though they entered the world in different ways, their destinies were intertwined. Each was born not to seek power, but to awaken humanity, to offer a path of wisdom, compassion, and salvation. Their journey had just begun. As they grew, both Siddhartha and Jesus displayed wisdom far beyond their years. Siddhartha Gautama was raised in splendor of a royal palace, surrounded by luxury and comfort. His father, King Suddhodana, shielded him from all suffering, hoping he would one day become a great ruler. Yet, despite being given everything, Siddhartha felt an unshakable restlessness. He couldn't ignore the lingering question in his heart. What lies beyond the palace walls? One day, his curiosity led him outside the palace, where he encountered four sights that would forever change his life. First, he saw an old man, frail and bent with age. Then, a sick man, suffering in pain. Next, a lifeless body carried through the streets. And finally, a monk, calm and serene despite the world's suffering. For the first time, Siddhartha understood the universal truth of human existence. Aging, sickness, and death were inevitable. But was there a way to transcend this suffering? The image of the peaceful monk lingered in his mind. It was then that he realized life inside the palace was an illusion of happiness. The real journey lay beyond its golden gates. Far away, in the town of Nazareth, another child was growing up with a profound sense of purpose. Jesus of Nazareth was not born into wealth, but was rich in wisdom and compassion. Even as a young boy, he possessed an extraordinary understanding of the divine. At the age of 12, he traveled with his parents to the great temple of Jerusalem. But when it was time to leave, he was nowhere to be found. His parents searched frantically, only to discover him sitting among the temple priests, deep in discussion. The scholars and teachers, men of great learning, were astonished by his insight. He spoke with clarity and wisdom far beyond his years. When Mary asked why he had stayed behind, Jesus simply replied, "Didn't you know I must be in my Father's house?" Even at such a young age, he was drawn to something greater than the material world. He sought truth, just as Siddhartha did. Both of them, despite growing up in different cultures, felt a deep calling. Siddhartha, born into royalty, began to question the nature of suffering. Jesus, born into humility, sought a greater connection with God. Though their paths were different, their hearts were the same, restless, searching, longing for truth. Their journeys of awakening had begun. There are moments in life that define everything. For Siddhartha and Jesus, it was the moment they chose to leave everything behind in pursuit of the truth. Siddhartha Gautama, a prince who had everything: power, wealth, a loving family. yet still felt an emptiness within. What he saw beyond the palace walls changed him forever. He could no longer return to a life of luxury, pretending suffering did not exist. He knew there was something greater, a path beyond worldly pain. One quiet night, as his wife and son lay asleep, Siddhartha walked away from the palace. The moon cast long shadows as he passed through the golden gates, his first steps on the path to enlightenment. From a prince, he became a wandering seeker, embracing the vastness of the world, living among nature, searching for answers to life's deepest questions. Centuries later, another man also left everything behind to fulfill his divine mission. Before he began preaching, Jesus withdrew into the wilderness, alone, to face his greatest trials. For 40 days he went without food, without shelter, only the burning sands beneath his feet and the endless sky above. But that was not his only test. During this time, Satan appeared, whispering temptations. He offered Jesus everything, wealth, power, and glory, if only he would abandon his purpose. Yet Jesus refused. He stood firm, unwavering in his commitment to the truth. Siddhartha left his kingdom in search of enlightenment. Jesus left the comforts of an ordinary life to bring salvation to humanity. Both followed an inner calling, stepping onto a path of uncertainty, but also a profound meaning. That was the moment their true journeys began. A prince becoming a seeker, a carpenter becoming the savior. They gave up everything to find everything. As they neared their awakening, both Siddhartha and Jesus faced their greatest test, temptation. Under the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha sat in deep meditation, unmoved by hunger, thirst, or exhaustion. But he was not alone. The demon Mara appeared, determined to break him. Mara sent his most beautiful daughters to seduce him, but Siddhartha remained still. Mara then promised him unimaginable power, but he did not waver. Finally, the demon unleashed a storm of fear. Thunder roared, arrows turned to fire, the earth trembled. But Siddhartha sat firm, unshaken, as steady as the mountains. With one touch of the earth, he declared his victory, and in that moment Mara vanished. In another place, centuries later, Jesus faced his own trial in the wilderness. For 40 days he was alone, fasting, praying, until Satan came. "Turn these stones into bread," the devil whispered, preying on his hunger. But Jesus refused. Then Satan took him to the highest point of the temple, daring him to prove his divine power. Again, Jesus denied him. Finally, Satan offered him all the kingdoms of the world, if only he would bow down. But Jesus, unwavering, responded, "Away from me, Satan." Both Siddhartha and Jesus were tested with desire, fear, and doubt. Both rejected the illusions of power and pleasure. And in doing so, they overcame the darkness, stepping into the light. After attaining enlightenment, the Buddha did not keep the truth to himself. He rose from his meditation and walked, determined to share what he had discovered. In the deer park of Sarnath, he gave his first sermon, teaching the Four Noble Truths, the reality of suffering and the path to liberation. From that moment, he dedicated his life to wandering the dusty roads of ancient India, spreading his message of compassion, selflessness, and freedom from suffering. He made no distinctions between people, whether a king, a beggar, or even a murderer. To him, everyone had the potential to awaken. In another land, centuries later, Jesus also began his mission. He traveled from town to town, preaching about love, forgiveness, and salvation. Under the shade of olive trees or on the rolling hills of Galilee, he spoke in parables, simple yet profound stories of kindness and mercy. He touched the sick, lifted the poor, and dined with those cast out by society. The weary and the broken came to him for comfort, and like the Buddha, he saw no differences among people. A shepherd or a tax collector, a woman shunned by society or a humble fisherman. He welcomed them all. They lived in different times, in different cultures, yet their hearts beat with the same rhythm, unconditional compassion. One taught liberation from suffering, the other taught salvation through love. But both brought light into the world. Love your enemies. Let go of attachments. Forgive. Release all burdens. These are not just words. They are not just philosophies. They are paths, guiding lights toward inner peace and true freedom. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment, and true liberation is found in letting go. He urged his followers to walk the middle way, free from extremes, free from desires that chain the soul. Jesus preached that love conquers all. Even in the face of betrayal, even in the midst of suffering, he taught forgiveness. He showed that true strength lies not in power, but in humility, not in taking, but in giving. Both urge us to look beyond ourselves, to see all beings as one, to break the barriers of hatred, and to embrace the boundless power of compassion. Their voices still echo across centuries, reminding us of the path to peace. 2 men, 2 journeys, but one truth. What can we learn from them today? If you believe that love and compassion can change the world, share this video and let their message live on.